After completing my 10th class exams in 1979, my father suggested that I go and help my father's uncle and learn astrology. Mathematics being my favorite subject, I learned the calculations. My grandfather taught me how to calculate the inclinations of each planet and how to calculate the lagna and the meridian center MC. And he gave me some birth charts to draw. Thus, I learned how to draw the birth charts first and showed interest in predictions. So my grandfather told me some predictions, some of the tips that he usually uses for predictions. And after learning those tips, I documented some of them. I verified with my father. While my father and my grandfather have laid the foundation for me to get interested in astrology, for almost a decade or 2 decades, I didn't show any interest. Welcome to my new series, horoscopes of the month. In this series, I'm going to present one horoscope for each month, and the native who was born in that month, a famous person. I'll pick that person horoscope and then try to analyze the natives, some of the past events, and analyze it using some of the astrological techniques that I learned. Hope you will enjoy this video presentation, and please feel free to comment if you know any person. Please let me know the person birth details and the Wikipedia link. I will go in detail, do some research and figure it out. If that person is the right person that fits my choice, then I will surely include that person in my horoscope of the month series. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation. Welcome to Shastri Karra's Astrological series. This is the series about the horoscope of the month. Every month, I pick one person, famous person's horoscope, and try to analyze it. This is for the month of December, and this time I picked one of my favorite hero from Telugu South Indian in film industry, Telugu Tollywood or Telugu South Indian industry. His name is Rana Daggubati. He was born in 1984. He is not only my favorite as an actor, he is a philanthropist, he is a entrepreneur and a very nice person according to the media. And I felt so bad when I heard something about his health. So since December is his birth month, I've decided that this time in the for the horoscope of the month in December, I decided to use his birth details and try to analyze his birth chart first and then do a transit analysis for the year 2021. I'm hoping that you will like this presentation. And as I said earlier, I repeat it one more time. If you have any famous persons, living persons birth details, and you are confident that the place, time and date of birth is correct, then you can pass it on to me, and depending upon the month of their birth, I will put it in the horoscope of the month, and I will do it in the year 2021. Thank you very much for watching this video. As I said, this is the birth chart of the famous Tollywood hero Rana Daggubati. He was born on 14th December 1984 at 10:10 a.m. in Chennai. And you can see his chart that I did it using JHora software. First and the foremost, let's what I do is, as soon as I get the birth chart, I look at the Rasi Sandhis. Are there any planets in the Rasi Sandhis? And here, to my surprise, I notice there are 4 planets that are in Rasi Sandhi. Sun, who is the 8th house lord, is in a Rasi Sandhi. That means he is swinging between 8th and the 9th house, because he is 28 degrees. So he is swinging between the 8th house lord residing in the 11th house is swinging between the 11th and 12th houses. And then comes Mercury. Mercury, since Sun is 28 degrees, you will have Mercury plus or minus of 2 degrees. So Mercury is also swinging in the 11th house from Rashi Lagna, and it is also swinging between the 11th and 12th houses. So the most important thing here you have to see is the 6th and 6th house lord Mercury and the 8th house lord Sun are in Rasi Sandhi, swinging between 11th and 12th houses, where the 11th house is the Labhasthanamo and the 12th house, since they are the 6th and 8th house lords, 12th house deals with the hospitalizations. So means moksha sthanamo, 12th house is moksha sthanamo. So the 6th and 12th house, 6th and 8th house lords are swinging, and they are inclined more towards moving to the 12th house, because they were about to exit the 11th house, which is the Scorpio. The third planet that I saw in Rasi Sandhi is Mars. Mars is the 4th and 11th house lord, and Mars is residing in the first house, like in the first house self. So the 4th and the 11th house lord is residing in the first house, indicates that it is having a direct aspect on the 7th house, which is the Marakasthanamo. You know, Mars is a violent planet, and Mars always deals with when it comes to the human body, it deals with blood. So it is directly having an aspect on the Marakasthanamo 7th house. The 7th house lord is Moon, and that Moon is residing in the 8th house. And so Mars is having, with its 8th aspect, is looking at the 8th, not only just the 8th house, it is also looking at the 7th house lord Moon. So if you take Mars into as Rashi Sandhi, so if it is 27 degrees, so it is swinging between the first house and the second house. So if you take the Mars to be in the first house, then it is having an issue with the 7th and 8th house lord. If you take Mars in the second house, then it is having a direct aspect on the 8th house, where the 7th house lord is residing. Overall, Mars, the most violent planet, is having a, whichever way you look at it, is having a direct aspect or a direct relationship with the 7th house lord Moon in the 8th house. Then comes Saturn. Saturn is 29 degrees in Libra. Remember, Saturn is exalted in Libra. So exalted Saturn is in Saturn is the Lagnadipati, the first and second house lord. Second house is Marakasthanamo. So Marakasthanadipati is Saturn, and that Saturn is in a exalted mode, and that too in since it is in a Rasi Sandhi, even though it is at the end of Libra, that means swinging to the next house Scorpio, which is the 11th house. So from 10th house it is trying to swing to 11th house, and so that means it is moving from exalted status to a normal status. So the Lagnadipati, because Saturn is in a exalted, Saturn is in a Rasi Sandhi, so the Saturn will have some sort of its exalted status still continued, irrespective of whether it is in the Libra, in the 10th house from Rasi Sandhi, or the 11th house from Rashi Lagna. If it takes the 11th, if Saturn is assumed to be in the 11th house, because it is in the edge of that, and if Saturn is about to jump into the 11th house, that means it is losing its exalted positions, then the problem will be like, because from Saturn's direct aspect will be on Rahu, who is in the 5th house. Rahu in the 5th house, and Sun and Mercury are residing there. So it's a little, because of this Rasi Sandhi of 4 important planets, this particular chart is highly complicated. And if you look at the natives early life and the health related issues the native had gone through, those who have seen heard his early life and those who look at this Rashis, this chart, and how the Rasis, the important planets are in a Sandhi or a Rasi Sandhi, you can clearly see that what the Rasi Sandhi's impact on the native is clearly visible. So basically saying this particular native's chart is not an easy, is not a cake of, it's not a cakewalk to analyze it. There are a lot of if then statements to consider it. So it's like, I'll give you one simple example, not to, rather than leaving it here, let me tell you why I said that it's not a cakewalk to analyze this chart. If you consider sun, you see there are 4 planets. So if you take sun in the 8th house, in the 11th house where it is, and then the possibilities are Mercury is considered to be the same house co-joined with sun, first possibility. The second possibility is Mercury being in what you call swing to the next house, that is the 12th house. So you have 4 planets, so there are factorial 4 ways of possibilities. Factorial 4 way means 1 into 2 into 3 into 4, 4 3s are 12, 4 3s are 12, 12 2s are 24. So there are 24 ways just these 4 planets positions can be analyzed. That means you are going to get 24 charts, D1 charts, 24 D1 charts to analyze. Of these 24 D1 charts, you have no idea which chart is the right one that the native. So you cannot predict the future of the native because your Rasi charts, there are 24 Rasi charts available for this particular native, just because 4 important planets are on a Rasi Sandhi. Keep that in mind. Because of that reason, these type of charts are highly complicated and they are advisable to not to tell with my personal opinion is with a grain of salt. Just give the predictions, but at the same time make sure that the people to whom I am predicting or to who are listening, I want to tell them that this is my predictions will not be 100% correct, because out of the 24 possible Rasi charts, I am just looking at the one Rasi chart only. So these are the ways. The reason I took this particular native is because I want to explain to the people that when the planets are in a Rasi Sandhi, do not rush to give a prediction. First look at how many possible D1 charts can be generated, and the higher it is, the chances of the getting a perfect prediction is lower. So I hope you understood what I was trying to tell here. Let me go, even though I know that this is not going to be a perfect prediction. The reason I picked it up is because he's my favorite person in my, and it's December is his month, and I want to go through some of his chart when I heard something bad about his health recently in the news, and so I decided to look at the chart. And after looking at the chart, I felt that I share what I knew, I saw it to all of you. After going through the Rasi chart, what I did was, what is the current Vimsottari Dasa? These are the steps that I do take it. So the protocol or the procedures that I follow while analyzing a particular native is, first look at the Rashi chart, identify if there are any Rasi Sandhis, any planets in Rasi Sandhis, then look at the Vimsottari Dasa for the current period. Here for this particular native, the Vimsottari Dasa is Moon Mahadasa is all the way till 2022. That means almost 2 years, 2021 and 2022, 2 years. Almost for 2 more years he has the Moon Mahadasa, and the current Antaradasa is Venus Antaradasa is running. That started in August of 2020 and it will go all the way till March of 2022. So what is Moon? From in Rashi Lagna, Moon is the 7th house lord residing in the 8th house. Okay, and Venus is the 5th house lord and the 10th house lord residing in the first house and having a direct aspect on the seventh house. Moon is the seventh house lord residing in the eighth house. So when you look at it, the seventh house is the Kalatrasthanamu. Venus is the natural seventh house lord residing in the first house and looking at the seventh house of the Netu. And Venus is the fifth house lord. Fifth house is the Putrasthanamu, and the 10th house is Dharmasthanamu. So as soon as you see it, the Venus Antardasa started in August 2nd, and I heard that this is on the internet. I found out that he got married on 8th August. That means exactly during the Venus Mahadasa Antardasa and Venus Pratyantaradasa. And if you go further deep, it will be Venus Sukshmantaradasa too. So he got married in Moon Mahadasa, Venus Antaradasa, Venus Pratyantaradasa, and Venus Sukshmantaradasa. If you look at it, how powerful the Venus had done it is, the most important thing that Venus had done is, since it is the natural seventh house lord and it is in the first house having a direct aspect with the seventh house, and it is the seventh house lord Mahadasa running. That's the first thing. Second, Venus is residing in house owned by Saturn, and Saturn is the Lagnadipati, and second house lord Kutumbasthanadipati is also Saturn, and Saturn is residing in the house owned by Venus. So that Parivartana yoga is there. That's another thing you have to keep in mind. And then Mars is also looking at the seventh house, and Mars is the fourth house lord and the 11th house lord. Fourth house is the Sukhasthanamu, and the 11th house is house of desires. And then the most important thing here you have to see is the transit. In August 2020, if I remember correctly, transit Saturn is in Capricorn, that is the first house, and transit Jupiter is in the 12th house. 12th house is pleasures of bed. Jupiter owns that house. Natal Jupiter is residing there. Transit Jupiter has co-joined with natal Jupiter in the 12th house, which is the pleasures of bed. Natal Saturn is in the 10th house, and it is the Lagnadipati, and it is having it with its third aspect. It is looking at the 12th house, the pleasures of bed, and natal Saturn, transit Saturn is in the first house, and from there it is having a direct aspect on the 7th house, which is Moon. So the Lord is Moon. So this tells you that during this Mahadasa, Moon Mahadasa and Venus Antaradasa, this is the reason why the Netu got married. So further down in the Venus Antaradasa, like in the year 2021, how the things will be is what I am going to analyze using the transit analysis. Since Jupiter and Saturn are the two slow moving planets, and they own very important houses here or reside in an important house, I had just looked at the Jupiter and Saturn aspects here. I'm just looking at the Jupiter and Saturn aspects in the Rasi chart. Let me go for Jupiter aspect first. Jupiter from Rashi Lagna, Jupiter owns the 12th house and the 3rd house, and now Jupiter is residing in the 12th house. That means the 12th house lord is residing in its own house. That's a very important thing. And Jupiter, it's a good planet, nice planet. So any good planet is residing in the 12th house is always a good sign in general for any Netu. And now let's start looking at the Jupiter aspects. Jupiter's fifth aspect is on the 4th house from Rashi Lagna, which is owned by Mars, and Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 6th house owned by Mercury, but that 6th house is empty. That's very positive, good thing for this particular Netu. And Jupiter 9th aspect is on the 8th house. That's where the problem is on the 8th house, where the 7th house Lord Moon is residing. So the 12th house means hospitalizations. So the 12th house Lord is looking at the 6th house, Rogasthanamo. Fortunately, it's empty. But the 12th house Lord's 9th aspect is on Moon in the 8th house, which is the Mrityusthanamo, where the Marakasthanadipati Moon is residing. So the 7th house and the 8th house Moon is trying to have an impact on the 12th house, which is the hospitalization part of it. So this just tells you that the native will have a frequent, I'm not saying all the time, but very frequently the native will have some sort of a medical issues, illness, I should say. Rogasthanam means illness only, and that illness, there are times where that illnesses will end up being a life-threatening situation and will be hospitalized. But at this point, it's just a hospitalization, and life-threatening situations is what you see because of Jupiter. Had it been some other planet, another malefic planet, the story would have been completely different. Now let's go to Saturn. Saturn is the Lagnadhipati. That's the reason why I picked it up. And Saturn is also the second house lord. Second house deals with, is a Marakasthanadhipati. So second, seventh houses are Marakasthanamu. So the first and second house lord Saturn is in the 10th house exalted. We will assume for time being we'll forget the Rasi Sandhi of the Saturn, and we'll just assume that Saturn is fully exalted, 100% exalted in Libra in the 10th house. So Saturn, the first and second house lord Saturn's direct third aspect is on Jupiter, which is the 12th house lord and residing in the 12th house itself. So if you look at it, Jupiter's ninth aspect is on the 8th house, where the 7th house lord is residing, and the first and second house lord Saturn's third aspect is on the 12th house, where the 12th house lord is residing. So the 12th house, the first and second house, first house means self, second house is Marakasthanamu, is like a type of death. I don't know how to tell the type of that death. And then the 12th house is hospitalizations, 7th house is also another Marakasthanamu type of death, and 8th house is the Mrityusthanamu, and the 7th house lord moon. So you can see that there is a strong triangular relationship between Jupiter, Saturn and moon. The relationship between Saturn and moon may be indirect. There is one relationship which I'm going to talk about, but there is some sort of a triangular relationship between Saturn, Jupiter and moon, and that's the another reason why you always see the native having some sort of a medical issues, and these are the medical issues that are never going to get resolved. It will be for the whole lifetime because of these natal planets. Also, if you look at it, Saturn's 10th aspect is on the 7th house, Marakasthanamu, and which is owned by moon, and moon's direct aspect is on the second house, which is owned by Saturn. So Saturn is looking at the house owned by moon, and moon is looking at the house owned by Saturn. They both are looking at each other's houses, and that's what I kept telling you, the reason why Jupiter, Saturn and moon, all the three of them are having some sort of a direct or indirect relationship. This is what I meant by when I said that one. So basically, if you look at this chart, like I said earlier, the chart is so complicated, and now when you just because of Rasi Sandhis, the chart is complicated, and then by looking at the most important planets aspects, you can further see that the native's health, overall health will be below average, number one. Number two, there will always be some sorts of life-threatening situations for this particular native in regard to health, means life-threatening situations with respect to health, and there's always a possibility for this particular native to be hospitalized for a better amount of his lifetime. Now that I completed analyzing the chart using the Rashi Lagna, the second part is to look at from the Chandra Lagna. While Rasi Lagna talks about the destiny, Chandra Lagna, from the Chandra Lagna, what are the predictions are done are based upon how the native's mind behaves. So because moon is related to mind, so wherever moon is, natal moon is, that house is considered to be the first house, and moon B is considered to be the wherever the the house lord considered to be the Lagnadipati. Here in this chart, moon is in Leo, so the Lagnadipati is sun. Now from moon, if you start looking the houses that the planets own, Mercury owns the second and the 11th house. The third house and the 10th house is owned by Venus. Fourth and ninth is Mars. Fifth and eighth is Jupiter. Sixth and seventh is Saturn. And moon owns the 12th house. So the 12th house lord is residing in the first house. That's number one. Number two is Jupiter owns the 8th house and Saturn owns the 7th house. And the second house is owned by Mercury. That's fine. So the question now that comes is, what are the important houses to be looked at? First and the foremost, what we look at is the Lagnadipati here. Sun is the Lagnadipati from Chandra Lagna. So Sun is in the 4th house from Chandra Lagna, and it is having a direct aspect with Rahu. So the Lagnadipati is having a direct aspect with one of the most malefic planet, Rahu, indicating that from moon, that is from the native's mind, is what you call, I forgot the exact word, is unstable. I don't mean to say exactly the word unstable, but it always will be in a dilemma. The native's mind will always be in a dilemma when it comes to any activity, and that you can see it because of the Rahu's impact on the Lagnadipati sun. The second what I want to talk about is the Marakasthanadipati, the second house lord Mercury, is also co-joined with the Lagnadipati, and it is having a direct aspect again on Rahu, another the same malefic planet. So the Marakasthanadipati is now with Lagnadipati and is having a direct aspect with the malefic planet Rahu. That's the next thing. And the third one is the 7th house lord. Who is the 7th who is the 7th house lord? The 7th house lord is Saturn, and Saturn is in the 3rd house exalted, and so moon direct from the 1st house, the 12th house lord residing in the 1st house is having a direct aspect on the 7th house. So 12th house deals with hospitalizations, and 7th house is the Marakasthanamu. So the lord, the moon, 12th house lord is directly having a direct aspect on the house pertaining to Marakasthanamu, and that too the house is owned by another malefic, the Marakasthanadipati Saturn. The planet Saturn itself is a Maraka planet, and now it owns the 7th house, number one. Number two, the 12th house lord moon is looking at the 7th house. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind for this particular native. Most of the time I'm analyzing this chart with respect to the native's health situations. As I said earlier, that's what I heard it, and which concerned me a lot. I was very disappointed to hear his health situation, so I looked at his chart and I looked at different ways to figure it out what could be the reason, and I'm trying to explain what are the things that I saw it here. The next one is after 7th, the 6th house lord is still the moon, still the Saturn. 8th house lord is Jupiter. 8th house lord Jupiter is in the 5th house, and if you look at it, the exalted 6th and 7th house lord's third aspect is on the 8th house lord Jupiter. So 6th house is Rogastanamu, 7th house is Marakasthanamu is now, and Saturn itself is a malefic planet, and what it is doing, it is looking at Jupiter, which is the 8th house lord. So even from the mental mind perspective, the native's health situation would not be encouraging for the whole life, for his whole life period. Then after doing that, the next thing I do is, what are the houses aspected? Now let me start with the Lagnadipati sun aspecting the 10th house. The Marakasthanadipati second house lord Mercury is also aspecting the 10th house, and then comes the Saturn. Saturn is aspecting, using the third aspect, is aspecting the fifth house where the eighth house Lord Jupiter is residing, and Saturn's direct aspect is on the ninth house, and Saturn's 10th aspect is on the house owned by what you call moon, is on the 12th house owned by moon. And then comes uh, what you call Mars. The reason why I took Mars is because Mars is the fourth house lord and the ninth house lord, but it is residing in the sixth house and co-joined with the 10th house lord Venus too. So Mars, we know that Mars is a violent planet. So Mars fourth aspect is on its own house, ninth house. Mars direct aspect residing in the sixth house, it's directly looking at the 12th house owned by moon, and Mars eighth aspect is on the first house where the 12th house lord moon is residing. That is another reason why this Netu's health situation is always a challenge for the for his whole lifetime. And the last one that I want to look at it is Jupiter. Jupiter's fifth aspect is again on the ninth house, and Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 11th house. Fortunately 11th house is empty, and Jupiter's 10th aspect is, ninth aspect is on the first house where the 12th house lord moon is residing. So overall, when you look at it, even whether you look from the Rashi Lagna or the Chandra Lagna, there's a strong bondage between 8th house lord Jupiter, Saturn and Mars. Remember, you look at it, Mars is residing in the house owned by Saturn, and Venus, there is a Parivartana Yoga between Venus and Saturn, and Saturn's third aspect is on the 8th house lord Jupiter, and Saturn's 10th aspect is on the 12th house owned by moon. So this what you call the relationship that you see from the Rashi Lagna and the Chandra Lagna is enough to tell that this particular Netu's health situation will always be a challenge irrespective of what the Mahadasa is. Maybe for some Mahadasas it may be good, but for some Mahadasas it will be bad. Like for example, right now he is going to the moon Mahadasa, and it's a bad situation. I heard that when he was a kid, he had some medical issues. I didn't see what Vimsutari Mahadasa was running at that time, but like I said, if the Mahadasa is one of these malefic, both either natural malefic or a functional malefic Mahadasa is running, then during that period the Netu's health will issues will pop up very much. Let me go more in detail about from Chandra Lagna the aspects of Jupiter and Saturn only. Saturn is the 6th and 7th house lord, and is exalted. Jupiter is the 8th house lord, and there is a strong relationship between Jupiter and Saturn. So I took those and then I started looking at it. Like if you look at it, Jupiter's 9th aspect is on the first house where the 12th house lord moon is residing, and Jupiter's 5th aspect is on the 9th house, so we don't need to worry. Jupiter's direct aspect is on the 11th house, so we don't need to worry. So from Jupiter's perspective, the only worrisome what you call aspect is its 9th aspect, which is on the first house where moon is residing, and moon owns the 12th house. 12th house is hospitalization. Jupiter is the 8th house lord. So when the 8th house lord is looking at hospitalization 12th house, it indicates that there is always a possibility for the Netu to have a life threatening situations resulting into hospitalizations. This is the possibility. The next comes is Saturn. Saturn has three aspects. The third aspect is on the 5th house where the 8th house lord Jupiter is residing. The direct aspect is on the 9th house. Fortunately 9th house is empty, but the 9th house is owned by Mars, and Mars is residing in the house owned by Saturn. So that relationship between Mars and Saturn is clearly visible here. Okay, and then Saturn's 10th aspect is on 12th house, is the hospitalizations. So when you look at the relationship between that relationship that Saturn is having, it's having a relationship with Jupiter, it's having a relationship with Mars, and there is a Parivartana Yoga between Venus and Saturn, and it is looking at the 12th house owned by Moon. And Jupiter has a direct relationship only um, with Moon, and it is looking at the house owned by Mars, but there is no relationship between Mars and Jupiter. So overall here Saturn is the kingpin here, and anything that can happen will be it is due to the direct or indirect impact due to Saturn only. So let me go in detail and tell you the reason why I had said Saturn is the kingpin here. I had gone through analyzing the chart using the Rasi Lagna and then using the Chandra Lagna. The third part of analyzing the same D1 chart is looking at the Lagnadipati. Wherever the Lagnadipati in Rashi Lagna is, whoever is the Lagnadipati in Rasi Lagna, look at that planet in whichever the house that planet is residing, document it as the first house, and then analyze the chart. That is called the Lagnadipati chart analysis. Here, for this particular native, the Lagnadipati is Saturn. In Rasi Lagna, you can see that the Saturn is the Lagnadipati. So Saturn is residing in Libra, so Libra becomes the first house here. And then so if you look at it, Sun and Mercury are in the second house, Jupiter is in the third house, Saturn owns the fourth and fifth house, and sixth house is owned by Jupiter, seventh house is owned by Mars, the eighth house is owned by Venus, and the ninth, forget it, 10th, forget 11th, and the 12th house is owned by Mercury. So the most important things that we need to look at here is, first of all, the second house. The second and the seventh house. Remember, second and seventh houses are the Marakasthanamu. And the Marakasthanamu, for both second and seventh houses, the Lord is Mars. And Mars is residing in the fourth house, owned by the Saturn itself. So there is a relation. So this tells you that in the Sukhasthanamu, the family environment, there will always be some sort of a disturbances in the family environment for this particular native, especially due to the impact of Saturn, of the Mars impact and the Saturn's relationship. The third house we don't need to worry because it is just a Jupiter is there. In the fourth house, if you look at it, Venus is there. Venus, since Saturn is residing in Libra, Venus becomes the Lagnadipati here, the first house lord. The first house lord Venus is residing in the fourth house owned by Saturn. So you see there is a Parivartana Yoga between Saturn and Venus. Also, Venus owns the eighth house, the Markasthanamu, and that's where you have Rahu residing. So that tells you that Mars and Venus have become a very crucial planet for Saturn whenever anything pertaining to his life, health, and hospitalizations comes into picture. These are the three planets that plays a very important role here. And then since Jupiter owns the sixth house, which is the Rogasthanamu, and I have already told you that. So the last thing is the 12th house, with Saturn as the Lagnadipati. In the Lagnadipati chart, Mercury owns the 12th house, and Mercury is residing in the second house next to Saturn. Remember, wherever Saturn resides, the Behurga Sarla Paddhati says that wherever Saturn resides, it spoils the house next to its residence. First of all, Saturn is in Libra in exalted mode, so it has to spoil. Like I said, Saturn is in the Rasi Sandhi too. So if you assume that Saturn is in Libra as an exalted position, then it will spoil the house next to it, where Sun, its bitter enemy Sun, is residing, and the 12th house lord Mercury is residing. Okay, and if you assume because of Rasi Sandhi, if you assume Saturn to be in Scorpio, that means it co-joined with the Sun and Mercury. Okay, and then Saturn, everything, all the analysis will change. So it spoils the house to the next residence where Jupiter is residing. So either of the way, whether you take consider Saturn in Libra or in Scorpio, Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter, all the three are going to get impacted one way or the other. And then comes the most important is the house, the planets residing in the house owned by Saturn, the Mars and Venus. If you assume Saturn to be in Libra, Venus is your 8th house lord, and Mars is the 2nd and 7th house lord. I have already explained that part of it. If you assume Saturn to be in Scorpio, then Mars will be the 1st and 6th house lord, and Venus will be the 7th and 12th house lord. So either of the way, whether you assume Saturn in Libra or Saturn in Scorpio, the relationship between Saturn, Venus, and Mars does not change, and that always tells you that the native will have some sort of a health related issues resulting into hospitalization and some sort of a life threatening situations too. So the same conclusion that I had explained and justified, the same conclusion from three different perspectives. One is using Rashi Lagna, the other is using Chandra Lagna, and the third one using the Lagnadipati chart analysis. So either of the three, when you look from any of the three charts, forget about the Rasis and the planets having the Rasi Sandhi at this point. If you forget about that part of it, then if you look at any of these three charts, the outcome conclusion is still the same, that the native will have for his whole lifetime, the native will have some sort of a medical issues which will result into life threatening situations, and there will always be a frequent visit to means hospitalization is there. That means there will always be some sort of a frequent visits to hospitals, and since Mars is involved here, there is always a higher possibility for the native to undergo some sorts of its surgery where the loss of blood is primary. So finally, this particular chart analysis from all the three perspectives tells this is what the native situation is as of today. Now that I completed the analysis of the chart, let me go and look the same chart for the year 2021. How would this native's life will be? First and the foremost, in 2021 we have a 5 planet and 6 planet combination. The more information about this combination you can find it in my YouTube channel as a sidereal ephemeris 2021. That was the topic of the video. So in 2021 there will be 2 5 planet combinations and 1 6 planet combination. All these three combinations are going to be between 13th January and 12th of February. That means approximately for 30 days. Within these 30 days we are going to see these three combination, 2 5 planet and 1 6 planet combination. All the three combinations are going to be in Capricorn for in the year 2021, because Saturn is residing there for the whole year 2021, and somewhere in December 2020, transit Jupiter will move from Sagittarius to Capricorn. That means starting December 2020 itself, Saturn and Jupiter were residing together, and then in January there are a lot of other fast moving planets that come into that enter Capricorn, and that was the reason why we had three events, 2 5 planet combinations and 1 6 planet combination. So let's go and look at first and the foremost in the month of January and February, what is the Vinsotari Mahadasa for this particular native. It's still the Moon Mahadasa, Venus Antardasa. Up to that point it is there. And now let's go a little bit deeper. Like on 30th of January, Mars Pratyantara Dasa will start. So that means the first five planet combination is going to happen before the Mars Pratyantara Dasa, and then once the Mars Pratyantara Dasa comes, that is the time when the NATO is going to see the impact of the second five planet combination and the first six planet combination. That's the reason why I had only considered the Vimsotari Dasa with Mars Pratyantara Dasa only. So the first five planet combination, the first six planet combination will be somewhere between 1st of February and 6th of February. That's actually, I should say it as first six planet combo, not the first. There's a typo there. It is during the Rahu Sukshmantara Dasa, and the second five planet combination is going to happen somewhere during the Jupiter Sukshmantara Dasa and Saturn Sukshmantara Dasa. So overall, when you look at the Sukshmantara Dasas, it is Saturn, Jupiter and Rahu. These are the three planets whose Sukshmantara Dasa will be there running during these three major events in January/February of 2021. So let's go and look at, first of all, as I said, Jupiter and Saturn are going to be in the Capricorn. So since these are the transit planets, we use only the Chandra Lagna. So from Chandra Lagna, Capricorn is the 6th house, the Rogasthanamo, and the Rogasthanadipati is Saturn. He is residing in his own house, and he has co-joined with the 8th house lord Jupiter. Saturn is also the 7th house lord. So the 6th, 7th and 8th house lords are residing in the 6th house. So that's a very, very important thing to point here. The next one is Mars. Mars is the 4th house lord from Chandra Lagna, which is the Sukasthanamo, and Venus is the 3rd and the 10th house lord. So because of that, in January and February, first of all, we'll start with the 3rd house. The 3rd house means some sort of an issues with the siblings for this particular NATO. That's number one. Number two, the 10th house is career, and so some sort of an issue with in regard to the career, because if you see it in the 10th house, natal Rahu and transit Rahu are already co-joined there. So the career will be very dynamic. There will be a lot of ups and downs in his career during the year 2021, and precisely in January and February of 2021 because of this 5 and 6 planet combination. And then comes the six planets combinations. What they are, the planets that are going to be in Capricorn are Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus and Sun and Moon. Moon is the 6th planet. So the Moon is going to be in the 6th house. 6th house is a Dushtana house from Moon, and Moon itself is transit Moon is going to be there during the 6th planet combination. Transit Sun is going to be there. If you look at Sun is the 12th house lord, so that is hospitalizations. And if you look at Mercury is the 2nd house lord, that's a Marakasthanamo. So 2nd house lord Mercury, the 7th house lord Saturn, 8th house lord Jupiter and the 12th house lord Sun, all of them are going to sit in the 6th house during the both 5 planet and 6 planet combination, that is January and February of 2021. And if you look at it, the Moon 12th house lord Mahadasa is running, Venus Antardasa is running, and the most important here is Saturn, Jupiter and Rahu Sukshmantara Dasas are running. So the conclusion is, during these 5 and 6 planet combinations, the NATO will be having some sort of a medical issues. I don't know if I can say it as a life-threatening medical issues or just medical issues, but that is sure to result into hospitalization, for some sort of a hospitalization. Now let me go in detail for the whole year 2021, the transit analysis. The earlier one was only specifically for the month of January and February, and this one is for the whole year 2021. And in the whole year 2021, let's go and look at the Vimsotari Dasa. Moon Mahadasa, Venus Antardasa is running. Let's go and look at the Pratyantara Dasas. Sun Pratyantara Dasa is until end of December, so we don't need to worry. And it's a moon Pratyantara Dasa is hardly for 1 month, and during the moon Pratyantara Dasa is when we are going to have 1 6 5 planet combination, and then comes the Mars Pratyantara Dasa. That's when you are going to have the second 5 planet and the first 6 planet combinations that I had explained earlier. Now the question comes is from March all the way till December of 2021. Oh gosh, it's Rahu, Jupiter and Saturn Pratyantara Dasas. So Rahu is in the from Rashi Lagna, Rahu is in the 5th house. Transit and natal Rahu are co-joined in the 5th house. 5th house deals with family, Putrasthanamo or relationship with father. Now Rahu is in the 5th house and directly looking at the 11th house, where the 11th house lord, where in 11th house where the 8th house lord Sun is also there. Sun deals with father, 8th house deals with Mujasthanamo, and the 5th house deals with, sometimes 5th house deals with progeny and also the father. So during the Rahu Pratyantara Dasa from March to June, there will be some sort of a events that are directly related to the native's father, especially the father. And of course, something, since your 5th house also deals with progeny, maybe there might be some event that's related to the progeny also for him. He got married in August 2020, and this is March to June 2021, almost like 8-9 months. Okay, so that's one possibility. The next one is, as I said, Jupiter and Saturn both will be, Jupiter will be in Capricorn, co-joined with Saturn until end of March 2021. Then Jupiter will go to Aquarius, the next house, which is the second house from Rashi Lagna, owned by Saturn too. And from there, in Aquarius he will be there until September, and then again he will come back to Capricorn. So the native will, whatever the life, however the native had spent his life in the month of January, February and March, that will be there will be a break from April till September, and again from September the same sort of a life will be repeated until November of 2021. In December 2021 is when Jupiter will permanently leave Saturn and go to Aquarius. So for in the whole year, January through March, and again from September through November, the native's health situation will be an extremely challenging one. And when you look at the Vimsotari Dasa, during like from until April of 2021, it is the Mars Pratyantara Dasa, and then Rahu's Pratyantara Dasa is until June, July, August. So again by September it will be Saturn's Pratyantara Dasa. Saturn from September through December. So when Jupiter returns back to Capricorn, it will be the Saturn's Pratyantara Dasa, and Saturn is the Lagnadipati and the second house lord, and transit Saturn is residing in his own house, the first house Lagna, and is having a direct aspect on the 7th house, and of course on the 10th house where natal Saturn is residing. So whatever happens, it is the Saturn, both the natal and the transit Saturns are the ones who are going to decide the event, whether an event good or bad is supposed to happen or not. So, and Jupiter, the lord, is only cooperating, and Rahu residing, both natal and transit Rahu co-joining is a catalyst for Saturn here. Since we are looking at the transit planets, let's look from the Chandra Lagna too. From Chandra Lagna, oh, I already explained it. In the month of January and February and a little bit of March, I already explained from Chandra Lagna how bad the native's health will be, and how then with a high possibility for the native to be hospitalized frequently. And then comes from Chandra Lagna, if you look at it, Jupiter Rahu will be in the 10th house. That means the career will be dynamic in the year 2021, and it will be more visible from March through April. Some unexpected changes, unexpected events happen from March to June in year 2021 in with a direct relationship to his career. And since Rahu, natal and transit Rahu are directly looking at the 4th house, so that unexpected changes might be either due to the family environment, or that unexpected changes in career might have an impact on the family environment. So it is either due to the family, some issues in the families, there was a problem in the his career got a problematic, or because of a problem in his career there were some issues in his family home life environment. So it is a mutual relationship. We don't know which one comes first and which one will be the which one is the actual image picture and which one is the shadow for it. And then comes Jupiter from June through August. Jupiter will be in Capricorn, which is the 7th house. So if you look at it, the 8th house lord is residing in the 7th house, and the 7th house lord is residing in the 6th house, and the 6th house lord is residing in the 6th house itself. 6th and 7th houses are owned by Saturn, 8th house is owned by Jupiter, and 5th house is also owned by Jupiter from Moon. So when things are going from here between June and August, this is something that is a little bit difficult to explain without knowing the native's complete family history or what is happening in the native's family. But I can throw some stones here, I can do some guesswork here. My immediate guesswork is 6, 7, 8 houses from the native, for the native, indicates as usual some health related issues, life threatening issues. Health related issues which are also life threatening, might be a life threatening one resulting into hospitalization. This is the common standard sentence I'm keep telling for all the during the whole period of this video, because that's what exactly will happen for this native in the year 2021. Then comes because Jupiter is also the 5th house lord. 5th house deals with progeny and father, and since I said that there is a problem in the 4th house and house, which is the home life environment for this particular native during the Rahu Pratintar Dasa, which is March through June, that problem might have an impact. Whatever the problem or whatever happened in March through June, that whatever happened, that will have an impact in from June to August to the native's father, because 5th house deals with father, and 10th house is Karmasthanamo, and the sun is there. Sun is in the 12th house lord residing there. So something pertaining to the native's father is going to happen. And then as usual, from August till December, it's a Saturn Pratyantara Dasa. There's nothing new to talk about Saturn's Pratyantara Dasa, because whatever happened all this time from January till August, it just keep repeating it. It just continues in from August till December of 2021. Now comes the final conclusion for this particular presentation. Basically, the reason I took this particular native's chart is because it's not only complicated as I explained earlier, because there are 4 planets that are in Rasi Sandhi, and due to that reason the D1 chart itself, there is a possibility for factorial 4, which is 24 D1 charts are possible. So that tells you how complicated it is to predict such a native. That's the first reason. Second, for picking up this chart, the second reason is the native has the Saturn as a Lagnadipati, and from Moon, Saturn is the 6th and 7th house lord. Saturn is exalted, and I had noticed that the chart, whoever the native is, that chart is the native will be going through some sort of a medical related issues for the whole part of his life. And recently in the internet I came to know that the native had some medical issues in the month of August of 2020 or September of 2020, October 2020. So that's the reason why I decided that I take this particular chart, go in detail from to the best of my knowledge from all the possible aspects of astrological knowledge that I had, and do an analysis and explain to everybody why this particular native is going through all these types of medical issues from astrological perspective. This is just for educational purposes. I created this video. Please use it to, if you are learning astrology, or you already knew the astrology but are interested to know how what techniques I use to predict it, or what methodologies that I use to predict it. Use this video as an educational purposes video only. I'm confident that those who are listened to this video gained some sort of an astrological knowledge after viewing this video. If you still have any doubts astrologically only, please feel free to post it in the YouTube channel comments, or you can directly email it to me. Thank you very much for watching my video. Thanks a lot.
Disclaimer. Last updated, May 29, 2020. Interpretation and definitions. Interpretation. The words of which the initial letter is capitalized have meanings defined under the following conditions. The following definitions shall have the same meaning regardless of whether they appear in singular or in plural. Definitions. For the purposes of this disclaimer, company, referred to as either the company, we, us or are in this cookie's policy, refers to Astrological astrological series. You means the individual accessing the service, or the company, or other legal entity on behalf of which such individual is accessing or using the service, as applicable. Application means the software program provided by the company downloaded by you on any electronic device named Astrological astrological series. Service refers to the application. Disclaimer. The information contained on the service is for general information purposes only. The company assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions in the contents of the service. In no event shall the company be liable for any special, direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damages or any damages whatsoever, whether in an action of contract, negligence or other tort, arising out of or in connection with the use of the service or the contents of the service. The company reserves the right to make additions, deletions, or modifications to the contents on the service at any time without prior notice. This disclaimer has been created with the help of the disclaimer generator. The company does not warrant that the service is free of viruses or other harmful components. External links. Disclaimer. The service may contain links to external websites that are not provided or maintained by or in any way affiliated with the company. Please note that the company does not guarantee the accuracy, relevance, timeliness, or completeness of any information on these external websites. Errors and omissions. Disclaimer. The information given by the service is for general guidance on matters of interest only. Even if the company takes every precaution to ensure the content of the service is both current and accurate, errors can occur. Plus, given the changing nature of laws, rules and regulations, there may be delays, omissions or inaccuracies in the information contained on the service. The company is not responsible for any errors or omissions, or for the results obtained from the use of this information. Fair use. Disclaimer. The company may use copyrighted material which has not always been specifically authorized by the copyright owner. The company is making such material available for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research. The company believes this constitutes a fair use of any such copyrighted material as provided for in Section 107 of the United States Copyright Law. If you wish to use copyrighted material from the service for your own purposes that go beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner. Views expressed. Disclaimer. The service may contain views and opinions which are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other author, agency, organization, employer or company, including the company. Comments published by users are their sole responsibility and the users will take full responsibility, liability and blame for any libel or litigation that results from something written in or as a direct result of something written in a comment. The company is not liable for any comment published by users and reserve the right to delete any comment for any reason whatsoever. No responsibility disclaimer. The information on the service is provided with the understanding that the company is not herein engaged in rendering legal, accounting, tax, or other professional advice and services. As such, it should not be used as a substitute for consultation with professional accounting, tax, legal or other competent advisors. In no event shall the company or its suppliers be liable for any special, incidental, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever arising out of or in connection with your access or use or inability to access or use the service. Use at your own risk disclaimer. All information in the service is provided as is, with no guarantee of completeness, accuracy, timeliness or the results obtained from the use of this information, and without warranty of any kind, express or implied, including, but not limited to warranties of performance, merchantability and fitness for a particular purpose. The company will not be liable to you or anyone else for any decision made or action taken in reliance on the information given by the service or for any consequential, special or similar damages, even if advised of the possibility of such damages. Contact us. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, you can contact us by email @gmail.com.